Hello class, I hope everyone's doing very well today. We are going to be practicing how to solve a series circuit for its resistance, and then we're also going to be using that in our Ohm's law, which we've learned about last week. So our first couple of questions are just to get us to use the right formulas. We learned when we were learning Ohm's law that we had three different forms of this equation. We could have used V is equal to I times R. We could use I is equal to V divided by R. Or we could have used R is equal to V divided by I. So if we were trying to solve for voltage, we would use our first one. If we were trying to solve for current, we would use our second one. If we were trying to solve for resistance, we would use our last one. Well, our question here is, what is Ohm's law when we're trying to solve for current? Well, that'll be our middle one here. So that's the one we'll be focusing on a lot today. The other question that we have is, what is the formula we use to find R total in a series? Well, we just learned on our Zoom call this Monday that we have an equation for our R total, and that is just equal to R1 plus R2 plus R3 ... until we just keep adding the amount of resistors or resistance that we have. So let's look at how one of these works in our equation here. So let's go to number 6. I'll show you guys just a couple of these. I'll let you do the rest. So we, as always, are going to start with what's given. So we have our picture here. We can see we have a battery, and then we're going to go through one resistor, and then through a second resistor, and back to our battery here. So the first thing we see is a voltage. So we're going to write that our battery has 10 volts. The next thing we're going to write is that R1 is equal to 12 ohms. Now this little symbol is hard to find. I usually go to insert up here. If you go to this thing called special characters and then draw a little thing that kind of looks like an ohm, it pops up. It'll find it for you. It's also, yeah, it's called the letter omega. We could have also searched omega, and a bunch of them come up. But we want the one that looks like this. So I think drawing it is the easiest way to find it. And then once I have it drawn, I just keep it copied to my clipboard, so I can always just paste. All right, and then R2 is going to be 8, and then we're going to call it ohms as well. So I can hit paste, and I get another of those little signs. I can also type out ohms. So I can also type 8 ohms. They mean the same thing. Our equations that we're going to use, of course, are the ones we just wrote down up here. So our first one is going to be our total that we're going to use is equal to R1 plus R2. We only have 2 resistors, so we only need to go up to R2. Oh, sorry, that's in the wrong question. There we go. And we're also going to use I is equal to V divided by R. So this R total is what we would use for R normally. So the first thing we need to do is find R total. And R total is going to be equal to R1 plus R2. So I have 12 ohms plus 8 ohms. And I know all of you are very, very good at addition, and so everyone is probably shouting, Mister, that's 20 ohms, which is correct. So our R total is 20 ohms. The next thing we're going to do is our Ohm's law, like we always have. V divided by, oh, sorry, we'll type in our number. So we're going to use this equation. We're going to say V is equal to 10 volts. And then we just found what our R was. Our resistance is going to be 20 ohms. So we can say that our answer would be our current is equal to 0.5 amps. Anytime we have current, it's amps or amperes. And 10 divided by 20 is 0.5 or 1/2. Those are all the same. So this would be our answer for what is the current in the circuit. If we only used R1 instead of R total, we would get a bigger answer, or if we only used R2 instead of R total, we wouldn't get the right answer. So we have to make sure we're using our R total. Let's look at one more together. Let's help with this one. This picture is a little blurry, but I think it's still a good example. So in the picture below, what is the current in the circuit? So we're going to go through the same steps, but we're going to have 3 resistors this time. So the first thing I see that our V, our battery, our volts is 10 volts. The next thing I see as I go along is R1 is 10 ohms. 10 ohms. I see R2 is 20 ohms, and that R3 is 30 ohms. Our equations are going to be the same, so I'm actually just going to steal them from up here. We will have to add an extra R because we have 3 R's, but that's okay. So we're going to steal them from up here and say plus R3 and then we're going to go through the same steps. The first thing we need to do is find R total. We can say that is equal to R1, which is 10 ohms, plus R2, which is 20 ohms, plus R3, which is 30 ohms. And again, all you guys are so good at addition that everyone is shouting that is 60 ohms for our R total. So the next step we need to do to find our current is solve for I. I stands for our current is equal to our V divided by R total. So our V is 10 volts, and we're going to divide it by this answer that we just got, which was 60 ohms. Now, we might know this fraction in our head. We might be able to do it by hand. Just to double check though, let's use a calculator for 10 divided by 60. I'm guessing it's 0.125, but let's see. So I'm going to go calculator. I'm going to go to 10 divided by 60. 0.66. I was a little bit off on my guess, so we're going to say 0.166. We'll round up to 167, and amperes is what we measure our current in. So that is how we find our current when we have multiple resistors in a series or in a line. I mentioned this in our classroom, but just to be sure, these advanced questions you do not have to do unless you want to. They're a little bit trickier, so they're not quite the same process as I've just shown you, but it's all using the same equations, maybe just in a little bit different way. This time I'm giving you R total and asking you to find R3, and then you would find the current the exact same way, but I'm giving you R total instead of giving you R3, so we could maybe find out how to do that one. And then this one, we're missing an R, and we give you the current. So I give you the current, I give you the voltage, and the thing that you are missing is R total. So if you guys could try that one and see if you get it right, that would be great. But I am not expecting you to do these. These are just for extra work, extra practice, because they're a little bit harder because of the math side of things, the algebra side of things. But that is how we do these kinds of problems. And if you guys have any questions, please let me know.